Let me take you inside what's happening in Iran right now, and then I'll bring it home to the only question that really matters for the American people. What does this mean for America, for your paycheck, for your safety, and for our standing in the world? Iran is not having a moment. Iran is having a stress test of the regime itself. The latest wave of unrest began in late December 2025 and spread nationwide in the context of a collapsing currency, punishing inflation, and day-to-day economic breakdown that ordinary Iranians feel every time they try to buy food, medicine, or fuel. That's the spark. The gasoline for that spark is deeper. Decades of corruption, repression, and a political system that offers people less and less hope that tomorrow will be better than today. Now, when protests hit a country like Iran, you have to understand the logic of the ruling system. It's not a normal government that worries about losing the next election. It's an authoritarian state that worries about losing control, period. That creates a brutal incentive structure. Clamp down fast, disrupt communication, arrest organizers, and try to break the momentum before it becomes a national strike movement. And by early January, that is exactly what a number of credible reports and observers say we saw. Harsh crackdowns, detentions, and a big fight over information. Who can film, who can share, who can even access the internet to coordinate. Here's the part Americans should not miss. Every time this happens in Iran, it becomes a tug of war between two stories. The protester story is simple. We can't live like this. The regime's story is also simple. This is foreign sabotage. And the tragedy is that Washington can accidentally help the regime tell its story. That brings me to America's actions and the danger of doing the wrong thing for the right reason. President Trump publicly floated the idea that the United States would intervene if Iranian authorities used violent force against protesters. Reuters reported that on January 2, 2026, Trump said the U.S. would come to protesters' rescue if they were violently suppressed, using language like locked and loaded. And then, on January 15, 2026, the administration imposed sanctions on Iranian officials tied to the crackdown, and Treasury announced measures targeting what it described as architects of repression. Congress's own research arm, the Congressional Research Service, laid out the menu of possible U.S. responses: sanctions, efforts to expand internet access, oversight of negotiations, and even debates about authorizing or restricting military action. On paper, some of that sounds tough, even righteous. Support freedom, punish abusers, stand with the people. Most Americans hear that and think, good. And morally, I understand that instinct. But geopolitics is where good instincts can still get Americans hurt, financially and physically, if the strategy is sloppy. Let's talk about the sanctions piece first, because this is where Trump world always runs. Maximum pressure, more pressure, and then when the pressure doesn't produce political surrender, talk louder and act like the volume is a strategy. Targeted sanctions on specific officials involved in repression can be defensible, especially if they are coordinated with allies, aimed at assets and travel, and designed to raise the personal cost for people ordering crackdowns. That's the theory. But here's the practical question. What is the end game? If your end game is regime collapse, say it. If your end game is behavior change, define it. If your end game is look strong on TV, well, congratulations, that's the easiest one, and also the most dangerous for Americans. Because broad escalating economic warfare, especially when it spills over into secondary sanctions on other countries and firms, doesn't just hit Tehran. It hits oil flows, shipping risk, insurance risk, and global prices. And when global energy risk rises, Americans feel it at the pump. That's not theory. That's your weekend plans, your commute, your family budget. The system is connected. And Trump's approach to Iran has repeatedly leaned toward wider economic coercion, including threats that punish third parties. Now, I can already hear the pushback, but sanctions hurt Iran's regime sometimes, but they also can hurt ordinary people first, and they can hand the regime a propaganda gift. See, America is strangling you. Even Al Jazeera's reporting has emphasized the way sanctions have helped degrade Iran's economy and shape the conditions people are protesting about in the first place. That doesn't mean you reward the regime. It means you need precision. You need a strategy that doesn't accidentally punish the very population you're claiming to support. Second, let's talk about the intervention talk. Locked and loaded, rescue missions, hints of force. I'm going to be blunt. That kind of language is reckless, not because America should be weak, but because it confuses moral outrage with military planning. If the President of the United States signals readiness to intervene inside Iran, you create three immediate problems. Problem one, you help Iranian hardliners sell the story that protesters are Western proxies. That splits the opposition. Some people will still protest. Others will back off because they don't want their movement branded as a foreign project. You weaken the organic legitimacy of domestic dissent, exactly what an authoritarian regime wants. Problem two, you raise the risk of miscalculation. Iran has multiple security arms, multiple chains of command, and a long history of using proxies and asymmetric tools. When Washington sounds trigger-happy, Tehran doesn't respond like a frightened homeowner. It responds like a state that looks for ways to impose costs without fighting America head-on. That can mean harassment in the Gulf, cyber activity, proxy pressure on U.S. partners, or actions that create a market shock. And again, when markets get spooked, Americans pay. Problem three, you drag the United States toward an undefined conflict without public consent and without congressional clarity. And CRS specifically flags that Congress may weigh whether to authorize or restrict military action as the situation evolves. That's not a footnote. That's the Constitution colliding with presidential impulse. This is where I'm going to give you the most populist truth I can give you, and it's still 100% serious. America cannot keep being run like a reality show where foreign policy is a sequence of threats, applause lines, and improvisation. If you want to help Iranian protesters, you don't start by promising a rescue you're not prepared to deliver. You start by doing the hard, unglamorous work that actually shifts the balance in favor of civil society without turning it into an American-branded project. So what should America do in concrete terms that helps our interests and reflects our values? First, get disciplined about objectives. Is the U.S. objective to deter mass atrocities, to avoid a regional war, to prevent nuclear escalation, to support human rights? Those goals can overlap, but they can also conflict if you're not careful. A smart policy ranks priorities and avoids self-inflicted trade-offs. Second, stick to targeted measures that hit decision makers, not families. Sanction individuals and entities credibly tied to repression, corruption, and illicit finance. Build multinational alignment so it's not America versus Iran, but a coalition versus repression. Treasury's move against specific actors is one tool here, but it should be part of a broader, coordinated approach. not a one-off headline. Third, take the information fight seriously. Authoritarians fear cameras more than speeches. Helping expand access to communications tools and keeping channels open legally and responsibly can do more to empower citizens than chest-thumping about missiles. CRS explicitly points to foreign assistance aimed at expanding internet access in Iran as one of the options Congress could consider. That's the kind of lever that matches the moment. Fourth, do not set fire to diplomacy while claiming you want peace. Iran's nuclear file doesn't disappear because protesters are in the streets. And if Washington swings wildly between maximum pressure and locked and loaded, you increase the odds of nuclear acceleration and regional insecurity. We've already seen Trump frame a renewed push for a verified nuclear arrangement while simultaneously escalating pressure tactics. That contradiction isn't strength. It's confusion wearing a red tie. Fifth, protect Americans from the economic blowback. If you want to pressure Tehran, you also need a plan for stabilizing energy markets, coordinating with allies, and reducing price shocks. Otherwise, you're effectively taxing the American working class at the gas pump to prove a political point. Now let me land this plane on the core question. What does this mean for America and the American people? It means uncertainty. It means risk. It means that a fragile moment inside Iran can turn into a regional flare-up if the U.S. and Iran start playing chicken in the Gulf. It means markets can get jumpy and prices can rise. It means U.S. troops and assets in the region can face increased threat. And it means America's credibility is on the line because the world watches whether we can speak responsibly, act strategically, and lead with allies instead of acting like the global sheriff who shoots first and explains later. And here is my constructive expert critique of Trump's posture. He keeps reaching for the fastest political sugar high, threats, dramatic language, sanctions as branding, while skipping the strategic nutrition, coalition building, clarity of objectives, congressional legitimacy, and disciplined escalation control. Reuters reporting on his intervention rhetoric is a flashing red warning light. When you promise rescue in a country like Iran, you're not just talking to Tehran. You're talking to every actor who wants to test America, trap America, or bait America. Americans deserve a foreign policy that's tough when it must be, careful when it should be, and always anchored in one basic standard. Does it make your life safer and more affordable, or does it turn your future into a gamble? Because if our Iran policy becomes another improvisation, another episode, then the people who pay the price won't be the politicians in Washington. It'll be the same people who always pay, working families, service members, and small businesses that can't absorb shocks. That's the reality. Iran is in turmoil. The regime is under pressure. The people are angry, and the United States has influence but not control. The smart play is to help without hijacking, to pressure without punishing civilians, to deter without posturing, and to lead without lighting a match near a barrel of gasoline.